and change that name to Simon, I can put it in Simon's bank account. I can steal it. This is what we're thinking about. How do we change the name on the cheque? We can use mechanical erasure, mechanically rubbing things out and changing it. We can use chemicals. I've got a 4-minute video to show you later on what chemicals are used to change the details on documents by fraudsters. We can obliterate, rub out things. We can insert bigger numbers and letters after names. We can alter the information. Surgical tampering is using hypodermic needles to remove the print, which is the surface of the cheque. Right, it's obviously down for forward. What was that? Dollar bill. Did you see it? What was it? What denomination? How many dollars? 20. 1. $1 bill. Very observant. This is about fraud. This is about deceiving your eyes. Your CFOs, if the fraudster can deceive your eyes very quickly, he can hide his misrepresentation and get away with what he's done. This is actually how counterfeiters are making $19 profit on every note at the moment. It's a $1 bill. It's a $1 bill. They bleach the ends, they photocopy onto the ends, $20, and they have a wad of these. You've seen them, particularly on the African continent. They pay everything with wads of notes this thick, wrapped up with a band around the middle. They pay you, they count it, 20, 40, 60, 80, 100. It's really 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's called a raised note. It's a misrepresentation. It's about deceiving the viewer. Cheque fraud is an industry. It's not just a CFO stealing a cheque from his business, changing it to his own name and putting it through his bank account, knowing that he's got 29 days to do it because he does the bank reconciliation at the end of the month. It's a business. It's a production line. I'll just go through it with you. A cheque is intercepted in the post or stolen. Quite often a sack of mail is stolen. In America they call it dumpster diving. They steal sacks of rubbish, of mail. They separate it. They will look for cheques being delivered to pay bills. It goes to wholesalers. The wholesalers look at the cheques, pile them up. The insurance policies go one way, the bank statements go another way, the cheques go into one pile. The wholesaler gets the pile of cheques. He then passes this on to the scrutineers. The scrutineers look at each cheque that's been stolen. If it's made payable to BP, it's very easy to change. It's worth more money. If it's made payable to a very long Pakistani name and it's got no space after it, no space in, it's very difficult to change. If the cheque is for $1 and it's got a big gap after it, it's worth a lot of money. If it's properly secured and it's got lines after the amount and it's difficult to change, it's worth less money. The scrutineer values the cheques to the fraud syndicate. The scrutineer sorts through the cheques looking for soft targets. Those are cheques that are easy to change the details on. We'll have a look at the video a little bit later. The cheques are then sold to forgers for a certain percentage of their face value. The forgers do all the interesting stuff that you see on the TV. Catch Me If You Can. Have you seen the movie? Catch Me If You Can, where he changes the details on the cheques. He pretends he's an airline pilot. The forger does all the interesting work. We're going to learn a little bit more about that in the next 5 minutes. And then 7, the forger then sells the cheques onto a middle person, a middleman. It's now got an increased value. That $30 is now $30,000. It's not ABC, it's XYZ or Simon. I can now put it in my bank account. The middlemen pass the cheques on to negotiators. The negotiators are members of the syndicate, but they typically work in banks. Many banks have the problems of fraudsters working with them on the payroll. We see this. We've seen a pattern here. They are syndicate members simply because their salary at the bank is probably 10% of the salary they earn from the syndicate. What do they do in the banks? They look for soft accounts, or they look for solid bank accounts that they can put these cheques through. For example, I have a bank account in England. I go to Europe once a year skiing. I may use it a little bit in January and February. The rest of the year, I do not use this bank account. The bank knows that. The fraudsters know that. They can put checks through my bank account in August and September and manipulate the bank statements, and I will never know. Remember, it's in and out. And 24 hours later, the money is transferred from the solid bank account to overseas or withdrawn in cash, but usually transferred through several different accounts. That enters the world of money laundering. So this is a typical check syndicate. You can see it's a production line, it's complicated, it's got experienced people in there, it's a big business, and it's very profitable. Handwriting. The art of handwriting is called hieroglyphics. The experts, apart from the ancient Egyptians, are fraudsters. Let's see why. We steal a check made payable for 100. Can you see how easy it is to change it to 800? That might be 100,000, 100 million. If you can make that very small change there to the 1, can you see how the 1 becomes 8 there? Sorry, I'm using this side. Can you see here on $2,000, $2 million, how easy it is to change a 2 to a 5? And likewise, the narrative, 2 becomes a 5 very easily. 7 becomes 70. 7 becomes 70. Always consider the writing as well. 13 becomes 33 very easily. 10 becomes 50. 10 becomes 50. This is what the scrutineer does in this process we've just looked at. He looks at the checks that are very easy to change. These are some real names that we found while I was with Ernst & Young. Checks, names that have been changed. A check made payable to Nestle. This name was added after it and an account opened in that name. Let's go straight to this one. Pay KPMG. Sorry, trading as kind people made good. KPMG. They add this on and open an account in the name of kind people made good. Eskom is a South African electrical company. The check was made payable to Eskom. They change it to Eskomania, Faith, whatever that says. And they open an account in that person's name. You are thinking about the banks and know your clients and how can they open accounts in these names. It's very easy. You can buy passports, you can buy identity documents, identity card with any name you want on it. Very easy to do. Did anybody notice that check signature? That was a real signature on a check that we found. It says, I screwed you. These fraudsters are joking. They're jokers. They laugh about this. They are in competition with each other. How much they steal each week. We use computers to analyze forensics, but in presentations I'm not very good. Let me talk about computer forensics, which I'm usually quite good at, okay? We got challenged by Coca-Cola in the African continent. They had 1 billion payments. In amongst those 1 billion payments in a year, there was fraud. Their profit and loss account looks unusual. There was something wrong. There were several $1 million missing. They call us in to have a look. What a forensic accountant does is he doesn't look through 1 billion transactions. You can't do that. Auditors do that and take samples. A forensic accountant has to find a way to look at suspicious transactions or anomalies. So what we did is we downloaded the creditor's master file, showing all the details of the suppliers' names, addresses, telephone numbers, and the transaction files, all the invoice numbers, delivery notes, everything. And then we downloaded the payroll of Coca-Cola, and all the names and addresses of people in the payroll, on the payroll, and their telephone numbers, and we did a match. We asked the computer, the software, to match the telephone numbers of suppliers supplying Coca-Cola with the telephone number of people on the payroll of Coca-Cola making the payments. We came up with 65 matches. Now this is unusual. To me it's unusual. How would a supplier in Australia or New Zealand or England supplying cans and stationery and petrol and electricity to the business, why would they have the same telephone number as people paying the bills in Coca-Cola? And it was fraud. All of it was fraud. They were inserting their own invoices into the pile of invoices to be approved, and they had their own telephone number on in case there was a query. That was matching data. It didn't look right. Instead of looking at 1 billion transactions, we homed in on 65. Okay? That was very ad-libbed to cover this.